Here's a question I get asked a lot. How do you start tricking? How do I do all those cool flips you and Clarence do? Am I too old to learn that stuff? Is it hard? What even is it? So, for someone that sees acrobatics and tricking and wants to learn, for a beginner you're probably going to be pretty overwhelmed. With most sports you can just find a club or search for a class and go and learn it. Pretty easy, right? But with tricking and acrobatics that's not the case. So if you want to learn it, you're going to have to take things into your own hands. Lucky for you, I'm here to break it down nice and simply. I'm going to give you a guide of how to learn no matter what position you're starting from. If you want to skip any of the video, here's a bunch of timestamps on screen. So let's get to it. So what is tricking and its history? Tricking has roots in martial arts, and the way it basically started was when martial arts guys had competitions and they could do freestyle forms or katas. And they started doing some spin kicks, looked pretty cool, started adding some jump spin kicks, and it got more and more complicated until they were doing kind of a hybrid of acrobatics and martial arts. Back at that time, people were inventing new tricks all over the place. And there wasn't really a name for it. It was kind of just like freestyle martial arts. And because people are doing tricks, they just called it martial arts tricking, which kind of makes sense. So people now call it tricking for short, although tricking by itself sounds like a bit of a weird name. So there was a few others that tried to brand it with terms like XMA, which was extreme martial arts, and multi-level moves and stuff like that. But nothing really took off, and there's still not any governing body for the sport. So anyway, a bunch of people saw these moves online or on TV occasionally, and people wanted to learn. So a lot of people went outside on the grass in their backyard and learned, and people online used to call those backyard trickers. So fast forward a few years and the level kept building, and people are now doing insane tricks, whether that be on grass or a sprung floor, and the level keeps getting pushed each year. A lot of people think tricking is similar to free running or parkour. However, the difference is those sports use obstacles, whereas tricking is just on the flat ground. So you can think of tricking as any acrobatics on flat ground only. Therefore, tricking basically mixes martial arts, gymnastics floor moves, and a little bit of breakdancing. All of the tricks are generally split into sections. So you have flips, kicks, and twists. And sometimes you can mix these together, so you do a flip, a twist, and a kick all in one move. There's hundreds of tricking moves, and you can chain them together in so many different ways. That's normally called a combo. So people will combo moves together, and this is how people get really creative and unique. So let's start with what resources are there for you to learn tricking. So you're on one right now, YouTube. There's a bunch of tutorials on here. I've got a load on my channel. There's tons on other channels. I'd encourage you to watch a variety of those to get different tips, perspectives, and see some different styles. One downside of YouTube is you don't really know how difficult moves are, which moves to learn first, and how to progress them. And that's where this video comes in. So I'm going to break all of that down. So if you want a one-stop shop to learn tricking where everything's in one place, there's a website called Kojo's Tricks Lab. I have an affiliate link. I have a few videos on that website, and there's hundreds of videos from a bunch of pro trickers. There's also a beginner course where they'll take you through your first 10 sessions, what to learn in each session, and it's pretty simple. You can just follow that. However, that's a paid website, so you could just pay for a month, watch all the videos, and then cancel, but it's up to you. If you don't want to pay, I'm going to give you a bunch of other resources and ways to learn as well, so you don't need to. But it is a very good place to learn. Tricking's a pretty rare sport. You're probably not going to find any trickers in your local area. So the way we learn is basically collaborating with each other, mostly online or at gatherings, which is like a big meetup of people that are pre-arranged. And that site kind of tries to solve that problem. So you have everyone's knowledge all pushed into one place, so you can learn from it. Now let's look at what moves you should learn first and progress to. So there's a site called club540.com. And that basically has a list of all tricks. It's not all tricks, but a lot of tricks in difficulty order. So it will start with a beginner section, intermediate section, it will go down like that. And you can just click the name of a trick and it will pull up a little GIF at the side and show you what the trick looks like. So you can look at some beginner ones, see which ones you want to learn, come to YouTube, find a tutorial, and then go and practice it. Now a lot of those names are going to look pretty confusing, maybe a bit stupid, and that's fine. So let's talk about tricking terminology, why tricks are called what they are. Tricking kind of has its own language, and there's such a variety of tricks that can all be done in different ways. So take a Webster, for example, which is a front flip off one foot. There's a number of ways I could do that. So I could do it like this, or like this, or I could do it like this. Or if you're doing a combo, you can land in that landing stance and use that to transition in to another setup and another trick. Each trick has a setup. So you have a setup move, then the actual trick or a variation of that trick, and then you'll have a landing stance. So there's a limited number of ways you can take off into a trick, There's a whole bunch of tricks that you can do in the air, and then there's a limited number of ways you can land a trick. So a good site to learn the names of all the setup moves and all the landing moves is called tricktheory.com. However, it does go into quite a bit of detail, so I'd only recommend that site once you have advanced a little bit in tricking, but it has some really nice ideas and concepts on there. Now let's keep it really simple and split tricks into 3 groups: kicks, flips, and twists. Starting with kicks, there's 2 main ways to set up for kicks. You can either jump off of 2 feet, or you can jump off of 1 foot. We're always going to assume our target's in front, and if you take off in 2 feet, you're normally going to be taking off in what's called front side or what's called backside. The way you can remember it is think of what direction you're going to be traveling in during the trick, and if that direction would normally be a backflip, you're in backside, or if it's a front flip, you'd be in front side. So let's take the front side setup as an example. You take the setup and then have a number of degrees of rotation, so that might be 360, 540, 720. They all go up in 180 degree increments, which is a half turn, and then you have a kick. 540 and every 360 degrees upward is always normally a round kick, and then 360, 720, 1080 increments of 360 there are normally hook kicks. So people get really confused about rotation because a lot of the tricks don't actually have that much rotation in the air. So the way it works is it's basically you assume everything is from front side. So let's take a front side 360. From the takeoff position to once I've kicked and landed back in stance, I've done 360 degrees of rotation. So now let's say I start in a backside stance instead of a front side stance. I've already cut off 180 degrees of rotation that I'd need to do the same kick. However, we just call it the same thing because it's easier, because it looks very similar. So if you take this backside 900 as an example, the setup shaves off 180 degrees, so there should actually be 720 degrees of rotation in the air, which is 2 full spins. So you can see here the first spin, and then the second spin is counted once you've done the kick, landed. So sometimes you'll kick and there'll be a little bit of rotation on the floor after you kick. That's fine. Then the most common kicking setup off one leg is called a cheat setup. And it's called a cheat setup because you cheat that rotation even further. So cheat 900 would probably have almost a full rotation cut off of it because you do that rotation on 1 foot while you're still on the floor. However, the move looks very similar to the other moves. So compare this cheat 900 to the backside 900. The moves look almost the same. So we just call it a cheat 900 to keep things simple. It's then very easy to recognize a 900 kick, a 720 kick, and so on and so on. Now let's talk about flips. The naming of these is pretty easy, mostly comes from gymnastics. So you have a back handspring, front handspring, front flip, back flip, those taking off of one leg, which would be like a gainer or a Webster. And then you also have side flips and aerials, which is essentially a side flip with your legs out. It's kind of like a no-handed cartwheel. And then twisting moves are normally flips. However, they have another axis of rotation. So from gymnastics, you'd have like a full twist. But in tricking, we also have butterfly twist, corkscrews, aerial twists, moves like that. Okay, hopefully you're still with me. Next section is going to be what tricks to learn first. So each trick, no matter how complicated it is, normally has a base root trick. So take a corkscrew, for example. What this essentially is a backflip off one leg, but you're also doing a 360 spin to the side at the same time. So therefore, to do that move, you should first be able to backflip, then you should be able to backflip off of one leg, then you should be able to backflip with a full twisting rotation, then you should be able to backflip off one leg with a full twisting rotation. So you build it up slowly over time, and the base trick is normally quite easy. So those tricks before the more complicated tricks are called prerequisites. So a backflip would be a prerequisite for a gainer would be a prerequisite for a corkscrew. And you basically have no chance of landing the harder moves without nailing the prerequisites first. So when people ask, can I start tricking? Where do I start? Am I athletic enough? You can start with such simple moves like a round kick and a hook kick. And mostly anyone can learn these. And then it's just a case of leveling these up really slowly, little by little. So if you do learn a round kick and a hook kick, you can eventually learn a tornado kick. It's not much harder. It might take a little bit of time, but you can do it. You can then turn that tornado kick into a narrowbong, which is a little more complicated, and then you can turn it into a 540. And you can keep going down these paths and branch off and learn lots of different variations of tricks. So let's take another base trick, a cartwheel. You can aim to turn a cartwheel into a one-handed cartwheel, then a one-handed cartwheel but putting the second hand down, and then a no-handed cartwheel or a butterfly kick. You can then turn that butterfly kick into a butterfly twist. For basic flips, you could start with a front handspring and a back handspring and progress those into a front flip and a back flip. If you want to learn some basic ground moves, you can start with a kip up, really easy ground move. Then also some basic setups like scoot, and then your base trick for kicks from a front side stance is going to be a front side 360. For backside, it's probably going to be a backside 720. And for cheat kicks, you already covered that with the tornado, which is the first move from a cheat setup. As a side note, I would also add a handstand in there just because it's a cool acrobatic thing to learn. It's quite easy to learn, and it will give you some good body control as you learn that. So let's say you learn all of the number one base tricks in each of those categories. You can put those together in almost any way you choose. So pick 2 of them and try to chain them together. Then you've got yourself a combo. So that's going to be a really basic combo you can start with. And as you collect tricks, you can add those in. Now you have a lot more combinations you can mix together and have a lot more variety. So for all those base tricks, I already have a playlist teaching you. So for your average person, it's probably going to take about 3 months of training, at least twice or 3 times a week, to learn all those basic tricks. So there's a link to that playlist in the description. Once you've learned all those, you can go to the next playlist in the description, and we add on to those tricks a little bit. So in each of those videos, I'll say what the prerequisite is that you should have already learned, and then how to progress that onto the next trick. Now let's say you do all of those and you don't really know where to go. Here's a little flowchart I made which describes trick progressions. So we start with the base trick and move on to the next one. You should always learn the first trick, follow the arrows through the diagram, and then you can learn the next trick. So if you learn one, pick the next one that you want to learn, go to YouTube, look for a tutorial, and go and learn it. So let's start with the cartwheel as a base trick. You normally learn cartwheel, a round off, then a one-arm cartwheel, then an aerial, then an axe aerial, which is essentially just a different setup into the aerial, then a brandy, which is like a no-handed round off, then an aerial switch, and a reverse aerial, and so on and so on. Now let's look at the kicking chart. So kicks, you can always add rotations or more kicks to the base trick. So take a backside kick and you can just keep adding rotations and doing the same kick each time. So you can just keep adding rotations, the same as cheat setup kicks and the same as frontside kicks. So here's a list of all of those, and you can just search what these are on Club 540 if you want to see what they look like. So now for flips, you can progress back handspring and front handspring into back flip and front flip, and then you can progress those onto Gainer and Webster, which are essentially the same trick but taking off of one leg. Then you can progress into full twists, corks, and stuff like that. And butterfly kick, which is quite similar to aerial, can be turned into butterfly twist round, then hyper twist, and then a hyper hook, and then a double B twist. And you can just keep going on forever with these tricks. There's essentially an unlimited number of tricks because you can always add a rotation, you can always add a kick, and it kind of never ends. Next section, where to trick. So the best spot you can find is going to be a gymnastics center. It's going to have a soft sprung floor, normally a foam pit where you can learn dangerous moves into a bit more comfortably, and there's normally going to be a few other people there that can help you out with tricks. An open gymnastics session is normally like an hour or 2 hour slot where the gym is just open and anyone can come in and use the floor to do what they want. Sometimes there's a standardized warm-up, but it's definitely the best place to learn. If you're in the UK like me, you can use the British Gymnastics website to search for clubs in your area. You can search for adults, see if there's any classes, give them a phone call and see if they have open sessions. However, one thing to note is a lot of gyms don't like tricking because it's not quite gymnastics, and in these places the coaches are mainly focused on gymnastics. If they see something new and different that confuses them a bit, they normally don't like it. Tricking's not always in a straight line, so sometimes you will cross different paths on the floor, and they just generally don't like it. So there's a few gyms, a very few ones where I've been told not to come back, basically just because I'm tricking and they don't like it. And that's actually what's happened to me at the moment. I don't have a gym at the moment. Granted, we're in lockdown, take that out of the equation. A gym's told me not to go there just because they think tricking is too dangerous, basically. So I'm relegated to learn outside, where obviously it actually is more dangerous. But that's just the way it is. So the next best spot is just in a park somewhere, soft piece of grass, if you can find some nice grass anywhere. As flat as possible, you don't want any bumps or twigs that you're landing on, stuff like that. But one thing to note, I personally don't really like going to a park by myself, especially where it's busy, and trying to learn new tricks. And that's just a confidence thing. If you're learning something new, you're going to fall on your ass, and to the untrained eye, it's just going to look like you're throwing yourself into the ground and probably look pretty stupid. So the best way to combat that is to find a friend to learn tricking with. Once you get into the gist of things and start training, you'll be comfortable and you'll start progressing much faster. And the thing is, even if you are falling over looking stupid by yourself, people are not really going to remember it. They might look and think, oh, that's a bit weird, and then they're just going to focus on what they're doing for the day and go about their business. So don't worry about it too much. Just go out and learn if you can. If you really don't like it, then go out after hours where somewhere's lit up, like a football field with floodlights or something like that, and just find a way. So another option is to sign up to some gymnastics classes or some martial arts classes. Gymnastics classes are not going to let you stray too much from the main gymnastics moves, and they're probably going to progress you really slowly. They like people to have a perfect cartwheel before they move on. So that can hold you back a bit, but it gives you the sprung floor and a nice place to train. The downside to martial arts classes is If you just want to learn tricking and learn some cool fancy spin kicks, you're going to have to learn all the other stuff on the side, like katas and things like that. They're probably not going to do any jump spin kicks, and just keep to basic kicks like round kicks, maybe hook kicks. However, that's really good to build up your foundational kicks, so you have nice technique. A lot of people that come from a martial arts background, you can tell immediately because their round kicks and hook kicks are just so much cleaner and their hips are in the right position, and that's just years of doing basic kicks in a martial arts gym. Now, do you need to be athletic? No, you do not need to be athletic to start tricking. Like I said earlier, you can start with something so basic that anyone could learn it and just gradually progress it little by little. Tricking by itself is going to be good exercise. It's going to give you more coordination, more flexibility, more explosiveness, more strength, and those are all good things. Don't tell me you're too lazy and out of shape that you can't go and learn a cartwheel. No matter how bad it looks, you can go and try. You can learn a hook kick, you can learn a round kick. Don't make excuses because nobody cares. Now here's a few final tips before we end the video. So despite what I said earlier about being athletic, you don't need to be athletic. However, it does help. Obviously, the more power and the more explosiveness you have, the easier it's going to be to learn these tricks. So if you want to learn, then it's good motivation to just try and sort your diet out at the same time. Everyone knows what they should and shouldn't eat. Whatever diet you want to do, we kind of all know what's healthy and what's unhealthy. So sort your diet out as best you can. Do a little bit of conditioning on the side. Doesn't have to be anything complicated. A few push-ups and sit-ups, a bit of bodyweight exercise, go for a run. That's all going to help you learn tricks faster. Next tip, if you're a beginner and you see a gathering come up on Facebook, which is like a big meetup, and you can go, just go. You're going to learn the most there. You're going to have a really good training facility with a sprung floor. There's going to be loads of people that were all in the position you were in as a beginner with no one to help them. They had to learn themselves. They'll be more than happy to help you. A lot of trickers are weird kids that like anime, or when they were kids they liked superhero things and wanted to learn all these flips and martial arts and cool stuff. So yeah, you can meet a lot of people on the same wavelength as you and all help each other out, and it's just a really good environment. And the biggest tip of all I have is to film yourself. So film everything you do. Often when you watch tricks back, they'll look completely different to how they felt. And you can compare that footage to someone that can do the move really well, and you can see, oh, my leg's not going up where it should do there. And it's going to make you progress so much quicker if you can just compare the technique and then make changes. So film everything you do, watch it back, analyze it, and try and figure out what you're doing wrong or what you can do to improve. And the very last tip, don't compare yourself to others. So when I first started, we didn't have YouTube and we didn't have Instagram and stuff like that. I learned to backflip and I thought I was superhuman. I was like so excited that I'd learned a backflip. I just wanted to do it everywhere. And that excitement of doing it everywhere made the technique get better and made me improve. Whereas nowadays I can just go on Instagram and see people doing double backflips on concrete and everything like that, which are just rare occurrences, and then start comparing and go, oh, I can only backflip, it's not that good, I need to work. And that can be demotivating. So try not to do that too much. I mean, I've taught some people in real life and they've landed like their first B-twist, and they did it in a few weeks. And they were like, oh, it's still rubbish though, and kind of had a negative attitude about it just because they're training with me and they can see that I can do it easily, and they're kind of comparing themselves. And I was even more excited for this guy than he was in landing his first B-twists. If it's not enjoyable and it doesn't make you happy, then it's probably not a sport you should be doing. Tricking is basically a whole self-improvement journey where you improve your own coordination, overcome your own fears. I mean, it's scary to learn a backflip. When you overcome that fear, that gives you a massive sense of like accomplishment inside yourself. Like, wow, I actually did it. I overcame that fear. And it's hard, but when you do it, it's so rewarding, and that's what's good about this sport. So if you want to learn, just favorite this video, whatever, come back to it, see what moves you should learn next. If you have any questions, obviously put them in the comments. I will reply to them. And also if you want to send me any clips, so like I said, film yourself doing some tricks. If you're not quite landing it, send it to me on Instagram. Try and help you out with what you need to improve. I'm more than happy to do that. Don't just send me a message saying, how do I get better at aerials or something like that, without sending a video of it, because it could be 100 different things that you're doing wrong. Just send me a clip and I'll be more than happy to help. So that is it. Now that we can exercise outside during this lockdown, go and learn some tricks. It will be rewarding and you'll thank yourself for it later.